Alright, what's poppin', people? We're back with, I think, the first SVNU Viability Rankings video of the generation. We finally transitioned away from doing the very just broad tiering with like top, high, mid, low, and we've got it broken down into your standard S ranks, A+, A minus, etc. now. So I'm going to cover this. I'm not going to go as in-depth as I might in an update video down the line, where we have more rises and drops to reference. But I'll talk about the general trends of Pokemon, maybe that jumped up a ton or dropped a decent amount, as well as the new Pokemon that we got in the March tier shift, being Abomasnow, Darkspun, and Bombardier. As always, if you enjoy this kind of content, let me know down below. Of course, leave a like to show that you enjoy it too. And subscribe if you're not already subscribed, because, well, it's free. And I think doing free things is always fun. And yeah, let's talk about it. So, S rank, being Passimian and Sandaconda, I don't think will surprise a single soul. Passimian and Sandaconda are on damn near every team, it seems like. Passimian is the best choice scarfer in the format by a mile. There's no real competition for that slot. It does everything well. Pivots, it is knockoff. It's hard to wall because it's just really strong and has good coverage. And it's even a really good late game cleaner with Terrified in close combat. Meanwhile with Sandaconda, y'all know the story by now. Glare. You've got Glare in a format where there are very few Pokemon that really want to switch into a Glare. And we don't have Clerics either, so once you paralyze something, odds are it's staying paralyzed. In addition to that, of course, it's the only ground type that's tiered in you right now, I believe. Camerupt, I think, fell to PU? If it didn't, then okay. Camerupt's its competition, which isn't exactly saying a whole lot. And then we get to Eelektross in S-, alongside Vaporeon. So, you want to talk about Sandaconda abusers, though? Eel is the premier one. So, the most common Sandaconda set is, of course, Stealth Rock, Earthquake, Glare, Rest. And Eelektross, thanks to Levitate, it just completely blanks it. So long as you do not Terra, there's nothing that Sandaconda set can do. At most, you might see a Sandaconda drop Glare and run Stone Edge, or maybe you run into like a Coil Conda. Those are the only sets you're really ever going to see that can touch Eel, and even then, they run into some issues. Particularly if you're facing a Coil Eelektross set, because what Eelektross will just do is start boosting versus you. And very quickly, you're not going to be doing really any damage at all. It'll recover off the health with a Drain Punch, and then Eel's doing great. Otherwise, it just, is Assault Vest, potentially still walling your Conda the whole game, and then freely pivoting with Volt Switch, maybe spreading Paralysis with Discharge, all while checking a ton of just annoying Pokemon, especially the Quiver Dancers. Because you got Acid Spray, you could have Dragon Tail, you have Terra Steel to potentially make those mons a lot less of an issue too. And Vaporeon being the other one, just because it's such a generically useful defensive foe. Even if the resistances and immunities it offers aren't necessarily that good right now, it's just very bulky, and so as a result, it can still take a lot of neutral hits, say for example Zoroark's Dark Pulse, even Bruxish's Psychic Fangs. It can at least help stave off such attacks. And much like with Eel having Terra to potentially help it against some of the foes that it already checks, Vaporeon has Terra Dark to make sure that the Bruxish matchup, or even the Veluza matchup, become a decent bit more manageable. And then you can see our A+ rank. This is not really changed at all. These Pokemon have been getting hyped up as, some of the best mons in the format ever since we got the tier going. I think maybe the one that has risen is like Muck, but even then, by this point, Muck's been a standard fixture of the tier since mid to late alpha. So, it's not really anything new. I think the 1 or 2 points of contention that you'd bring up would be like the Dunsparce and Frostmoth. Because those got a good amount of support as well for being an S or S-. And of course, that's because the Dunsparce with Calm Mindsets is just really hard to manage. Terra Ghost makes it so Passimian can't ever revenge kill you. And whether you're running Shadow Ball for your normal plus Ghost coverage, or just even throwing on Flamethrower to have a better move to hit like Caparaja or even Frostmoth with, it's a very hard, bulky setup sweeper to stop once it gets going. And of course, meanwhile, Frostmoth might be the most polarizing foe in the entire tier, because it's, a Quiver Dance user, so it's already going to be pretty annoying by default. And it's very bulky, at least on the special side. So you're already limiting the pool of potential revenge killers by a good amount. I think the one thing that we mentioned that holds it back, or I guess two things maybe, are its reliance on Terra to have coverage for a lot of its defensive checks. And in its speed, because even at +1, something like Choice Scarf Passimian or Metacham or Toxicroak, for example, is easily outspeeding you. And if they need to Terra to KO you, well, they will. It's not a big deal at the end of the day if you prevent your team from getting run over. And then we can look at A rank. I'd say the main things to look at in A rank are the rise of Quill and Rotom, and then maybe the drop of Bruxish. So I'll talk about Quill and Rotom first. Quillfish is a Pokemon, it was one that I was pretty low on at the start of the tier, but as it's developed and centralized around Passimian, I've really enjoyed running Poison Point Quillfish. Naturally, it's a very versatile Pokemon with its EV spreads and sets, as we've seen throughout the videos where I use it. Most of the time we just see a, utility set, but I've run offensive on Rain. The utility sets are fun though, because I think there's two different ones that you go with. You either run max speed with Taunt Toxic, or you can go max just all into bulk, so that you tech Passimian as best as you can with the Toxic plus Protect. Protect will always be a good move, especially for scouting Terra in this generation. And it's probably the best Spiker in the format too. I don't think we even have any other Spikers ranked higher, yeah. So there you go, it's the best Spiker in the format. Meanwhile, Rotom is a Pokemon that definitely rose later on in February, where we originally kind of just discounted it entirely, didn't even really acknowledge it. But Rotom, just like Electros, has risen as a great Sandaconda abuser. I've showcased a lot of different sets. I think this mod is just super versatile. You've got Scarf, you've got just Will-O-Wisp Protect, like a kind of utility-based set. You've got Substitute with Nasty Plot, I really like that. Just a whole bunch of different sets that could really easily come into the most prominent Pokemon in the tier and say, okay, what you trying to do? And it's also very good at Passimian. This is one of the very few Pokemon that actually contests Passimian for the role of Choice Scarf Pokemon that pivots. Because you're faster than it, you can even block its CC, so you're actually dissuading them on from using the best move it's got. If you're a Will-O-Wisp Protect set, obviously you can always Scout Passimian, which is great. And if you're sub NP, well, Passimian can't revenge kill you. And then we can talk about Bruxish. Bruxish was a mon that we ranked in the top tier at first, and now it's fallen down to like mid-A. The vote was split, I think 50-50 on having it A+ or A. And I do think there is a decent amount of difference between that when we're looking at a Pokemon from the top rank. Because top in the original VR meant like a top 5 Pokemon in the tier. And now you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Pokemon are all being considered better than Bruxish. And I know we've definitely got people in the VR Council that would even rate some of the Pokemon in the A rank as better than Bruxish. The main reason I think just comes down to people feeling that Bruxish is a little bit more manageable now. Some of it's just people do make sure to prep their teams really well for Bruxish, whether it's through the increased Umbreon usage, Terra Dark Vaporeon being really good, or just, any other miscellaneous Terra. Say, for example, Terra Steel and Quillfish. You could potentially just say no Psychic Fangs for you, and then poison it with a Toxic, and well, now that Pokemon's a lot more manageable. And of course, there's also just a plethora of faster attackers that are really common that can all take on Bruxish. You've got your Choice Scarf Passimians, your Zoroarks, your Abostiffs, even your Scarf Metacham if you've got Thunder Punch. It's just not as effective, I feel, as it used to be at wall breaking. And even Oricorios oftentimes do run max speed specifically for Bruxish. So I feel it doesn't find as many turns to safely wall break compared to what it used to. Just, it's not as dangerous, I think, as well, given the shift towards offense. Because Bruxish kind of likes it when the meta's a little slower, because it gives you more turns to safely break it, because Bruxish is so strong. A lot of the time it's 2-hit KOing almost everything anyway. But as the meta's gotten more fast-paced, it's just been more... It's been struggling a lot more with finding those safe turns to get in. Even off of pivots, it's like, okay, I'm pivoting in, but maybe the mon that's out there is just something that I can't beat anyway. And a quick shout out to Driftblim being the best defogger in the tier. Nice status spreader. Nice CC deterrent. Nice ground immune. Nothing really else to say there. Then we get to A-, so we do see Abomasnow here. I actually voted Abomasnow to A, just flat out. I think the mod is really good. I think it's super dangerous as a wall breaker, because we have all of one common steel type, and you have earth power for it anyway, so you can consistently get damage off on it. And a lot of the generic special walls still do have to fear your coverage. Umbreon usage isn't exactly super high either. And that would maybe be the one Pokemon I'd be more worried about, because then you have to run Focus Blast to really threaten it. And that's only got 8 power points, so it's easily stalled out. You can miss. Just not the most fun move to use. I also like how it supports some of those semi-hail cores. So you could use, like, say, Abomasnow plus Frostmoth. Or you could use Abomasnow plus Rotom Frost. It gives some fun building options like that, too. And Aurora Veil is always going to be a pretty solid move. Even with the removal of Light Clay from the format, it still gives you a decent amount of turns, just because you set the screens both at the same time. So it's not like, say you led with, I don't know, like last gen Azatu, and how you had to set one screen and then the next, so you were getting effectively one less turn total of dual screens. And we see Cacturne still an A-, because it's weirdly good as an anti-meta pick. It could do a lot of lure stuff, like luring in Passimian and Okoing it with Leaf Storm. It's a weirdly good check to like Bruxish or Veluza. It perpetually comes in on something like a Vaporeon. Kinda nice, kinda nice. Is there anything else? I guess we could throw a shout out to Crabominable. Sort of like Muck, in that weird vein of just nice, specially defensive utility options. Assault Vest Crabominable is really strong and still really bulky, so it's a nice panic check to a good amount of the special attackers, like Frostmoth, or even like the Dunsparce. Not really a whole lot else to say there, just kind of cool mod. And we still see Farigiraf. Now I wanna quickly speak the good word of Farigiraf, because I feel like it's been criminally underrated. I really like Frostmoth, not Frostmoth, Farigiraf. I think the Dual Dance sets are super problematic for a lot of teams to deal with, especially when aided by Terra. You kind of just pick and choose a lot of what's allowed to answer you, and with stored power, they snowball out of control really, really easily. I feel like Farigiraf kind of suffers from low ladder usage syndrome, where it kind of isn't seen a ton, and so it's harder to gauge adequately until you use it how good it is. And as someone that's used it quite a bit, I'm a huge fan. I think this mod is insane. I voted it either A or A+. I think it's that good. So yeah. Now we get to B+. Now Bombardier's here. I think the best way to sum up Bombardier is Jack of all trades but master of none. It's just not been that convincing, especially when you compare it to the competition. So if I'm running a banded Bombardier, what's my competition? Well, Mabostiff, which is just stronger with Stakeout. It's also faster. And then Zoroark, which is just stronger and faster. It still pivots. You could even be talking about like Specs Zoroark, or maybe Physical with Sword Stance. Physical with Sword Stance, of course, can boost and be even more powerful while posing that late game threat to teams. Or you could just have Specs. You could be just Unga Bunga throwing off attacks left and right, doing a ton. Or Bombardier is sort of just like, okay, I'll get a knock versus the Conda, and then I'll Brave Bird spam, and I just hope something goes right along the way. And then you've got like Scarf Bombardier, which, I mean, the nice niche to that is it's faster than Medicham and Passimian. But, it just kind of lacks that power you want out of it, I've noticed. You're like super reliant on Terra, I feel, in comparison to some of the other pivots. And you've got some utility sets, I just haven't really been too convinced by them. It's still a very effective Pokemon, and that's why you see it still in B+. I think it could easily be A-. I think at the moment, though, we're still trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to enable this Pokemon, and we'll go from there. Next up, I do want to talk about Berserker and only B+. It was... I've not been a fan of Berserker. I think it's strictly worse than Copperajah. And if I need a Steel type on a team badly enough, I will have something on my team with Terra Steel. I just don't find much reason to use Berserker over Raja. The niche you'd point to would maybe be like Assault Vest, or just the fact it has U-turn. So you could run U-turn on a Stealth Rock set, and unlike Raja, where something comes in, or you're predicting something to switch into you, and you might have to double switch, well, Berserker could always just U-turn on that play, after setting its Stealth Rock. Raja's stat checking is just so appreciated. It's a lot stronger as well, which I think helps. So the set versatility of Berserker doesn't even really end up coming into play too much. And then you've got Veluza and B+2. I think Veluza's worth pointing out, because originally it was getting kind of memed on. People weren't very convinced by it at all. Because it's like, oh, the silly Filet Away set that is really hard to get going because Veluza's bulk isn't too good. So you boost, but okay, you die to the next turn anyway. You're just not strong enough, you know, etc., etc. Walled by Vaporeon even, etc., etc. But as we've seen in You Get More Play, a set that's risen to prominence has been a bulkier Veluza. With not rest, with recover. And these bulkier Veluzas are a lot harder to take out, especially when given recover. Because now you can get your Filet Away off, and you're not stuck at that low HP. You can get the recover, because things aren't going to one-shot you. And with stored power, you can make a lot of headway. And you end up with the Terra Fairy or Terra Fighting. Either one works, and that helps cover your weakness to dark types. So you're not really walled by them. You just kind of, at that point, praying to be able to finish off the opposing team and not get unlucky and fail to, like, KO whatever. And in Vivillon and B+, as a mon that I'm going to say, keep your eyes peeled, because I think Vivillon could very easily end up surging through the rankings at moment's notice. With Venomoth's ban, this Pokemon obviously lost one of its biggest competitors, and although it's super duper Terra reliant, I do still believe in Vivillon's power. It is the demon butterfly of old. So don't discount it yet. Compound Eyes with Hurricane Sleep Powder. Ooh. Now we get to B. So Braviary is a mon that I think everyone will notice has really fallen off. The main reason for it, I think, is it's just kind of like Bombardier, where the niche isn't super certain. Because you want to run it as a defogger, but the kind of like the Oricorios are better for their defensive profile at that point. Even though Braviary's got a lot better of overall stats, that fighting resistance is very nice to have just off rip. And if you're running an offensive set, well, you're a mon that's super reliant on recoil moves in a format where there's not a whole lot of removal, and you type overlap with a lot of the removal. So that can be a little awkward from a building standpoint, especially in a tier where it feels you have a lot of checkboxes you need to be able to tick off. You introduce those defensive issues early on, it can be a little hard to compensate for later on in the building process. And like I was saying with Bombardier, again, you look at the roles. Okay, if I'm a Scarfer, I compete with Passimian. If I'm Bandit, I compete with like Honchcrow and Bombardier even. If I'm Bulk Up, why am I not just running an Oricorio Quiver? That's just a better mon for setup. If I'm Defog, okay, well here's a whole bunch of other Foggers that are just better. And I did still vote Braviary to B+, because I feel with its stats, it's still good set diversity, and like these other sets it can run are still good. There's just the competition part of it, I think, that makes people in general not as high on it. Another mon that's maybe kind of fallen off is Crocolore. This mon is stapled to Stall's viability, and I'll be honest, I think B is too high for it. I'm not sold on Crocolore or Stall. I don't think as a standalone defensive Pokemon that it's very good at all. It doesn't really stop much of anything. If you're looking at the top wall breakers, none of them care about Crocolore. And a lot of it comes down to its Stealth Rock and General Hazard weakness. You get Rocks Up versus a Crocolore's team, this mon ain't doing anything for the rest of the battle. I promise you, it is not going to check anything. Every game I've run into a Crocolore with, I have said, turn 1, I'm getting my rocks, and I'm keeping them. And it gives you so much leverage around it, because the opponent has to try to get rocks off the field. That mon is so inhibited by Stealth Rock that your opponent ends up having to take very telegraphable lines throughout the game if they ever want to get some mileage out of it. And say Crocolore could actually come in and avoid a 2-hit KO, even a Rocks Up. Well, okay, congrats. You get to use your Slack Off now, and I get a free switch anyway. Potentially right back to my Rocker to set him right back up. It's just not I'm not convinced by it, and I think unless Stall sees a resurgence, that this mod's just gonna kind of keep falling off until it's in the recesses of, untiered. Then we got B- rank here. There's not really a whole lot to say here other than Oricorio Pow is B-, and it's a mon that could very easily rise up to like A if we ever decide that, you know, Oricorio is just good regardless of its base typing. That's really all I have to say about this one. And I guess Lilligant's the other Quiver Dance user. Something I could say real quick for Lilligant is I find it overly Terra reliant, and beyond that, needing multiple different Terra types to ever have some sort of consistency. I don't think Lilligant is very good. Maybe if the competition were banned, it would still just end up being too much, or just one of the top setup sweepers anyway. But it just offers so little. And then we got C rank. I'll be honest, there's nothing to comment on here, other than if I were to unrank some C ranks, I would unrank things like Carcole and Quaxwell, because I don't think Rapid Spin from these guys ends up giving them enough of a niche to make up for all of their glaring weaknesses. As we've seen in the lives I've done against Quaxwell, this mon doesn't do anything. Its stats are just too bad. It has, no move pool, so you know what it's gonna run. It's just very underwhelming. And then Carcole, I don't care about Carcole, man. I will run my Defogger. I don't care if I have to remove my own spikes. It's fine. But I think that's going to be it for this quick little overlook of the VR. Next time we do one of these, it'll probably be a little bit more in-depth because we'll have more specific rises and falls to reference. But I kind of wanted to use this just as an example. Not an example, but like an overview of the current NU tier and some trends that we're seeing type of commentary. I hope y'all enjoyed this, though. Leave a like if you did, of course. Let me know down below what you enjoyed about it. Yeah, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.